afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the second part in our series of Insurtech Evolution webinar. During this session, we'll delve into pressing questions surrounding technology transformation, how modern technology impacts the industry, and actionable strategies to drive operational efficiency. I'm Rebecca Angel, your host for today. I'm the VP of Strategic Partnerships at GhostDraft. And with me, we have Craig Musgrave, the SVP of Technology at ProAssurance. We have Jiffy Thomas, the VP of Professional Services MPL at Sapiens, and Laurence White, the EVP of Sales at GhostDraft. During the discussion, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A area of the webinar, and we'll answer these questions throughout today's discussion. And if we run out of time to answer your question, we'll make sure that our insurance experts get in touch with you. All right, let's get started. So how has the MPL landscape evolved over the past 5 years? And what role has technology played in this evolution? Jiffy, what are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Rebecca. Great to be on the show here. It's kind of a bit of a loaded question, right? The MPL landscape has been evolving quite a bit. And the way I would like to kind of at least answer or segment those is from a business perspective. Pre-2020, we've been seeing a lot of movement, right? Doctors leaving private practices to join hospitals. Recently, we've also seen private equity coming into the healthcare space, right? And what all of that is doing is just making the cost reduction be a focal point, right? How do companies control their costs? We're also seeing kind of a generational change where there's a lot of the younger generation joining the medical professional space. So there's a different set of expectation as this younger generation comes in. And typically, we've seen the insurance industry lag a little bit on the technology front and plays catch up. But I think we're also seeing that digital space being kind of being pushed by a demand coming in from the younger generation as well. We also are seeing a lot of merger and acquisitions going on, and companies either organically or inorganically growing into other states, right? So they're taking their existing book of business in a particular state and wanting to take that in a repeatable fashion and go into other states, right? So you get a little bit more of economy of scale there. And then from just a technology perspective, I think this is just common, and I don't think it's unique to MPL, but COVID has become a pivotal point where every company has to look into their technology footprint and kind of keep up with the changing demands. But in terms of insurance specifically, a lot of the workflows were manual, right? The insurance tends to be a lot around documentation, touch and feel, a lot of people, workforce management. You can have these companies have hundreds of employees going into the office, which COVID comes in, strikes it immediately. Everyone has to reorient themselves, adapt to remote working. But some of those processes, companies found them that they were still struggling with, right? Primary among that was the check issuance process. People were still actually physically printing checks from offices. So staff had to go in there. There were the policy documents that come out. All of that had to be printed in the gigantic printers on office locations. So they had to look for solutions. What do you do? Like, do you farm the documents out to an offsite printing location that prints it, stamps it, and mails it? But many companies through that process have started engaging in looking at online forms of those, either document distribution or payment services, right? So we're seeing a lot of traction around that. And then along with that came in, because of the remote employee option, cloud hosting is being widely adopted, right? People like to get away from hard infrastructures that you have on site, adopt more solutions that are online or hosted. So remote functionality works a lot quicker and easier there as well. And then overall, companies, like I said, mentioned before, just because of the younger generation, they really expect things to be digital, available, services being available online. So there's a lot of traction going on in companies trying to play catch up on the digital footprint that they have.
Mhm.
So, and off late, we've been attending some of the conferences on MPL, and the chatter is a lot about AI, right? And every industry is just gearing up to adopt AI. With MPL, there's a lot of studies going on, which areas specifically AI can come in and help. But there's a lot of traction going on there, especially with this private equity coming in, right? Their primary goal and aim is to increase profitability, and one of the chief reasons is where can they get some cost savings from using technology.
Mhm.
So I would say primarily a lot of growth, some inorganic expansion, some just organic expansion of just going into multiple states, trying to take the same staff and operations that you have and scale up. But there's a lot of inorganic expansion and activity going on as well.
Yeah, Craig, from the business side, what are you seeing as far as how the space has evolved?
Yeah, I think there's Jiffy mentioned really a good point. There's a transition going on here between old school versus new school. I was just amazed today. I got a call from my doctor. They said, we'll have to reset your appointment up because their fax system didn't work. And I still can't believe people are still using faxes. So you have that big transition where the older school doctors are still using older technology, but the younger people will still want to move over to digital, want everything online, want to be able to do it themselves. The industry itself is trying to still catch up as well. With AI coming through, with changing the landscape, with medical direction, procedures, the departments of insurance. So it's a really tough challenge to keep up with everything. And so you need to have good systems that can adapt pretty quickly, because I just see the speed of change as just ramping up exponentially.
Yeah. Well, on that point, when you talk about new systems and solutions, what is it that you look for in a new system or a solution? Does the technology outweigh the features and the functions? Are you looking for more customer self-service? What are the things that really draw you to a new and innovative solution?
So it's three parts to me. One, it's the partnership with the vendors, and is it going to be a good partnership? Because if you can't deliver the technology, then it doesn't really matter what you put in. Second, it'll be the features and functions, right? So the technology is great, but if it doesn't deliver what the business is needing, then it's useless. So the features and functions are very, very weigh a lot about how you select the technology. The third piece is really the ecosystem that we all have. As Jiffy mentioned, we've got a lot of cloud technologies coming along. So the question is, how do you put all that together, right? So as I've seen, typically we used to install our applications in a data center. That's rapidly changed over the last 5 to 10 years. Now we're basically, as you use applications, it's in the vendors' websites or the vendors' data centers. So IT is now starting to become more of a consolidation process where we need to be able to move documents and data from one place to another place, and then help bring that ecosystem together and make them all work together. So yeah, there's a lot of things you have to look at the technology, but it's going to be how good are the features and functions, and how good's the partnership that you have.
Yeah, yeah. That's great point right there. And that leads to my next question. So what are ProAssurance's current challenges, both technically and on the business side? And I guess more specifically, how is the technology that you're using, since we're talking about forms and document automation in this webinar, how is that technology really helping improve that forms development and automation process?
To answer the first part of your question around what are the challenges, I think the biggest challenge is change. And how do people adapt to change? there's so much that has to happen. The technology is just getting faster and faster. So if you look at cloud technologies, you're able to implement things rapidly compared to the old way we used to do things. But is the business really ready for that? Is the business able to adapt to this change? Even I have to say, is IT ready for the change, right? So you've still got old school IT people that think that we have to go into our data center and so on. You also have to have, my other challenges is, can I find people that want to help with integration? Can I find people that can work with data flows? When you start to get the forms and you start to get the different parts of the systems, it's how well you can integrate all these pieces together. So I know you're working with Sapiens and GhostDraft are working pretty heavily together. So you kind of come up with a single solution already, and it makes the delivery of that technology a lot easier than if I had to go and join both of them together. So I think as the vendors start to work together and integrate, that also becomes an easier way to get the business what they're really looking for.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting point, Craig. I think, when it's been an interesting journey, you mentioned that so much focus, certainly for you and your organization, but I think it's pretty typical across the industry, to the shift towards cloud-based solutions. When GhostDraft first started a dozen or so years ago with a cloud-native platform, I could tell you that there was some interesting conversations with insurance carriers back in the day where the concept of cloud was still very new. And the kind of your point of, yeah, we're used to putting things in a data center and working in that environment. And it certainly has been an interesting kind of journey along that way, as cloud has become really, I think, the de facto standard and the requirement from the industry with regard to any kind of implementation and any kind of application that's going to serve the business and be smooth and easy to implement from an IT perspective as well. I think that the other thing that I see on a regular basis is the importance of pre-integration. So when you're talking to multiple vendors to solve a myriad business problems, then the pre-integration between those vendors is becoming increasingly important, so that when it comes to standing up new solutions within your environment and being able to deliver quickly, and we talk a lot here at GhostDraft about the importance of speed to market. So if you can leverage those pre-integrated solutions from a whole host of vendors and ensure that the initial kind of startup and ramp up to actually producing output and generating business results can happen as quickly as possible, saving time and effort and kind of unburdening IT as much as is possible when you're talking about technological solutions to business problems.
Mm-hmm. When we're talking about, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So I was just going to finish up on some of
Sure.
Laurence's. I totally agree with you. So it's like, I look at partners now as, hey, I don't have to go and develop a data center. I don't have to install the software. I can turn to you and leverage your skill sets, your staff, and be able to get that product to market quicker, right? So I think the cloud solutions, and everyone talks cloud, and like, to me, it's just another data center somewhere else, right? That's all it is. But having the ability to leverage the vendors, the partners is really key. And that's where I said, if you don't have a good partnership, then things aren't going to work together. So now you're starting to really rely on each other to really make the solution work together.
And Rebecca, just to add on one additional point I mentioned about COVID and how COVID changed the industry, but on the vendor side as well, I want to highlight the fact that we have changed ourselves, right? Because prior to that, to Craig and Laurence's point, like the systems were all on-prem. The implementation methodology was very, very local and face-to-face oriented. That with the cloud solution, the implementation has transformed to exactly what we're having right now here, the Zoom call, an online meeting. So the speed to market is much, much quicker, where when we have a project start, we can engage with the customers right from the next day on. right? So there's no travel logistics involved. It's a much faster interaction with the customers, and it almost feels like you're there. But
Yeah.
the flip side is probably the customers' resources also are scattered around the country. So just getting talent has become quite easier as well, taking away the barrier of having people come into an on-site location.
Yeah, and pinpointing requirements and becoming more agile as well.
Exactly. So you can
Yes.
do things online. It's on the cloud. You move and push the code change really instantaneously, and you're able to demo that version.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about the forms process, what and how are the dynamics of maintaining and changing forms language shifting more from the IT department's responsibility over to giving that power to the business users? Laurence, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a common request, certainly from our customers and our mutual customers with Sapiens as well, which is, how do I unburden my IT department and empower my business users to take control of the processes that are required to generate the policy documents, claims documents, whatever they may be. And how do I manage that in a way that is easy to replicate? And certainly from a succession perspective, I think Craig and Jiffy were talking earlier about the aging out of a lot of the individuals within our industry. I think it's a common concern amongst not just the NPL business, but insurance as a whole. And so what I would say, software vendors and partners with the insurance industry need to be sure of is that they are creating a user interface that is easily consumed and putting a lot of the business decision-making processes as much into business people's hands as can possibly happen. And, when it comes to specifically, Rebecca, your question was around forms and documents, there traditionally has been, I think, conflict is probably too strong of a word, but just sort of natural business drivers that say, okay, I'm a resource in IT and somebody's asking me to make some changes to a whole host of documents that are time critical and, certainly have a lot of regulation around them to ensure that the information that's being presented on these documents is accurate and doesn't run afoul of insurance departments around the country and from various states to state. And so it seems unnatural almost to ask an IT person to be responsible for maintaining and updating those changes. We certainly know that there's a lot of data that moves around from the core applications into the document world, and IT rightly owns the movement and the dissemination of those data, but the use and the consumption of those data really rests within the people that are charged with making those business decisions. So we see a lot of insurance carriers asking us, can people in my product management department, for example, can people in my underwriting department easily access the document generation solution, make changes, be able to test those changes and be able to run different scenarios that ensure that we're not running afoul of jurisdiction requirements and effective date requirements and all of those kinds of things. So I definitely see, and again, I'm asked this question on a daily basis, multiple times a day. How can you make it easier for my business people to maintain a solution that is governed by our IT process? So the kind of the synergy between those two worlds is pretty critical.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jiffy, how do you see business groups preparing for self-service options when it comes to that?
Yeah, it really comes down to requirements, right? And forms, we see this much more heavier than the rest of the systems, that it's very, very dependent on the business. And it all starts from probably when they draft the forms, right? And the intent behind the forms, that gets translated to a piece of paper, and sometimes the requirements are hidden behind that, right? So It's all up here when they put a piece of paper together. It gets filed, it comes back, and then now you're taking that requirement and trying to convert that to the business IT leads, and the business IT leads try to convert that back to the vendors, analysts or BA, and then it goes yet again back to the developer. And then we go back all the way back until the business user tests it and says, oh, that's not what I intended. It's something else, right? So to Laurence's point, I think the whole life cycle, reducing the life cycle by more iterative forms of tool developments is really, really important. So if we can try to get ahead of the game and catch the requirements right during the filings, utilize the same method of documentation that they use for the filings, carry that into the requirements process, but also be able to give users the ability to test that kind of setup of the form far in advance of the finished product coming in. It's just that's a game changer right now. Is that we've learned that IT teams cannot struggle with the world of forms. You're much better off, like Laurence said, right? Empowering the business with the right set of tools, right? And letting them go there. The second piece is just within IT. I think we talked a little bit about the changing ecosystems, things moving to more online fashion, because IT was always there with the printer, deciding which tray the form comes out, and is there enough paper in it, and whatnot. All of that is being shifted over to just making sure data is secure, right? The forms are being saved, whether it's on the cloud. Is that being secured? Is that being monitored? How are you making that available as a customer self-service to ultimately your insured? So IT's role is not getting diminished, but it's just getting transferred into other areas of the flow itself.
Now, Craig, how is ProAssurance aligning itself with this model?
So we're taking it in two pieces. One, if you think about the documents by themselves, the ability to import, say, a Word document, and the ability to then review the results that you've programmed, or even the business has programmed, being able to see that real time is just, it's critical. So you can make sure that documents, less hands that touch the documents, the better, right? The less steps that we have to do to get the document from development into production, the better. The second process is, how do you manage who's got the document? And so using products like 360 helps us see where it is. Is it in development, QA, user acceptance test? So you kind of put both of those together. Within IT, we're trying to figure out how we can use our resources more effectively. And by doing that, it's like, if we can have the business start to take hold of the football, then that's great, right? So it just helps us all try to release a product to market as soon as possible. So it's just putting the combination together. And I think the next key thing is trusting people, right? You have to trust people that they're able to do that. They may not be able to do everything, but if they can do 80%, then why not? Let's work together. And there shouldn't be these silos between the departments. Everyone should work together.
Excellent. Good point. So kind of switching gears a little bit here, guys. With the industry constantly changing, what document or insurtech trends are other insurance lines following specifically? How is AI playing a role in the documentation space? I know we hear AI all over the place, but how is that really being encapsulated in the documentation space in the insurance industry?
So yeah, it's 2024, right? If you're not talking about AI, then you're doing it wrong, I think, from a technology standpoint. So the key for a solution provider and a software vendor is how can we really effectively use this technology that's obviously very new and changing and growing. And so we're seeing a lot of our carriers across multiple lines of business are really looking to be able to leverage the intellectual property that they already have. And we talk about IP as being the documents and forms that represent their products in the marketplace. And so when you're looking to add new products, maybe make changes to products, the ability to very quickly understand whether or not you already have specific language within a repository that could be many thousands of documents large, and quickly gain access to that information. So GhostDraft is employing AI specifically around that use case, which is if I have a repository of documents and I need to know what type of language exists within those documents, the ability to search across that vast repository and using AI to make suggestions to you that say, if you're trying to build this type of coverage, maybe it's an endorsement or an exclusion language to a particular document, where can I go find that so that I don't have to start from the beginning and perform all of the research that is necessary? So that's certainly one area that is increasing. The use cases are kind of pouring in as we speak. Another area that is very dear to our hearts here at GhostDraft is the ability to migrate from one application to another. As service providers, we all hope that once we have a customer for life, but the kind of ever-evolving landscape that we live in suggests that that's probably not going to be the case. So if a service provider can provide assistance to migrating from an environment to another environment, maybe it's an upgrade of a legacy platform to the latest platform that your core application solution provider is offering, and the work that needs to be done to take that information from the legacy environment into a new environment. And so there are lots of use cases that we're seeing that can help interrogate, specifically as near and dear to my heart, documents and forms are concerned, to reduce the amount of time and effort that it can take to migrate from one environment to another.
Yeah, Jiffy, what are you seeing as far as the use of AI over there at Sapiens?
Sure. Our experience has been a little bit on a different front of document management. It's more on the external documents coming into an insurance company. Because it could be anything from a claim note from an attorney, or an insured asking advice about a certain activity. So we're focusing a lot more on trying to decipher what's the content on that particular document, and trying to come up with what's the next workflow, and provide the data in a more presentable fashion so the individual can still take the action, but facilitating some of that flow without having to read through most of the document.
Yeah, Craig, what are you seeing from the ProAssurance side there?
So I'm seeing both sides that Jiffy and Laurence talked about. The other thing that we're starting to use AI for is if I have a policy document change that we're going to file with the DOI, we can quickly put the two documents together and find out what is the actual change, and be able to search through those documents. So, but a lot of the change coming through is reading the documents coming in from outside. The one thing, as people think about products and you put AI into your systems, I'm starting to talk to vendors about making sure they give us OCR attached with that document, right? Because AI has to read it. There's a cost for AI to read it. It'd be great if I get documents already ready to read. So just little features and things that we can start to work with all the different partners on.
Great. All right, well, this has flown by, everyone. So we're approaching the end of our time today. And we want to extend our heartfelt thanks to our panelists. Thank you so much, Craig, Jiffy, and Laurence, for sharing your invaluable insights with us today and all of your expertise. And we hope you found this discussion enlightening and inspiring, and you're ready to modernize your approach to Insurtech. So remember, staying ahead of the curve is really vital in today's dynamic marketplace. And if you have questions or want to learn more, visit ghostdraft.com or sapiens.com. And thank you for joining us. And we look forward to continuing these discussions throughout the summer. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.